From British colonies to independence, the birth of the United States. Today, the United States is one of the most powerful nations in the world. But more than 250 years ago, it did not exist. Instead, the eastern coast of North America was home to 13 British colonies. These colonies were ruled by Great Britain and subject to British laws and taxes. What began as a disagreement over taxes eventually became a revolution that changed world history forever. This is the story of how 13 British colonies fought for independence and created a new nation. The 13 colonies. During the 1600s and early 1700s, Britain established colonies along the eastern coast of North America. The colonies included Virginia, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Over time, these colonies grew rapidly. People came from Europe seeking land, religious freedom, and economic opportunities. Although the colonies were governed by Britain, they developed their own identities and local governments. By the mid-1700s, more than 2 million people lived in the colonies. A costly war. In 1756, Britain and France entered a major conflict known as the French and Indian War. The war lasted for 7 years and was fought across several continents. Britain eventually won and gained control of large territories in North America. However, victory came at a huge cost. The British government accumulated enormous debts. To recover money, Britain decided that the American colonies should help pay for the war. This decision would spark growing tensions. The tax crisis. In 1765, Britain introduced the Stamp Act. The law required colonists to pay taxes on newspapers, legal documents, and many printed materials. The colonists were furious. They argued that they had no representatives in the British Parliament. This led to a powerful slogan: "No taxation without representation." Many colonists believed Britain was treating them unfairly. Protests spread across the colonies. Some British officials were attacked, and goods were boycotted. Eventually, Britain repealed the Stamp Act. But the conflict was far from over. Growing anger. Britain continued imposing new taxes. The Townshend Acts placed taxes on imported goods. British soldiers were sent to maintain order. Many colonists viewed the soldiers as an occupying force. Tensions reached a breaking point in 1770. In Boston, a confrontation between colonists and British soldiers turned deadly. 5 colonists were killed in what became known as the Boston Massacre. News of the event spread quickly. Anti-British sentiment increased throughout the colonies. The Boston Tea Party. In 1773, Britain passed the Tea Act. The law gave the British East India Company special privileges in the tea trade. Many colonists saw this as another example of British control. On December 16, 1773, a group of colonists disguised themselves as Native Americans. They boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped hundreds of chests of tea into the water. The protest became known as the Boston Tea Party. Britain responded harshly. The government imposed strict punishments on Massachusetts and increased military control. Instead of intimidating the colonies, these actions united them. The First Continental Congress. In 1774, representatives from 12 colonies met in Philadelphia. This gathering became known as the First Continental Congress. The delegates discussed how to respond to British actions. They demanded greater rights and called for boycotts of British goods. Although many still hoped for reconciliation, trust between Britain and the colonies was disappearing. The stage was set for conflict. The first shots of the Revolution. In April 1775, British troops marched toward Lexington and conquered in Massachusetts. Their mission was to seize colonial weapons and arrest revolutionary leaders. Colonial militias confronted them. A shot was fired. To this day, nobody knows who fired first. The battles of Lexington and Concord marked the beginning of the American Revolutionary War. The colonies and Britain were now at war. The rise of George Washington. As fighting intensified, the colonies needed leadership. The Second Continental Congress appointed George Washington as commander of the Continental Army. Washington faced enormous challenges. His soldiers were often poorly trained and poorly supplied. Many lacked proper clothing, food, and weapons. Yet Washington's determination kept the revolutionary cause alive. His leadership would become one of the most important factors in America's struggle for independence. Declaring independence. By 1776, many colonists believed reconciliation with Britain was impossible. A growing number supported complete independence. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. The document was primarily written by Thomas Jefferson. It declared that all people possess certain rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It also announced that the colonies were no longer under British rule. The United States of America had been born. The Revolutionary War. Declaring independence was one thing. Winning it was another. Britain possessed one of the most powerful militaries in the world. The Continental Army faced overwhelming odds. For years, battles were fought across the colonies. The war brought hardship and destruction. Many soldiers endured terrible conditions. Despite setbacks, the revolutionaries continued fighting. Foreign assistance became crucial. France, eager to weaken Britain, provided money, weapons, and military support. French involvement dramatically changed the course of the war. The turning point. One of the most important moments came in 1777. American forces achieved a major victory at the Battle of Saratoga. The victory convinced France that the Americans had a real chance of success. France officially joined the war. The conflict became an international struggle. British resources were stretched across multiple fronts. The balance of power began to shift. Victory at Yorktown. In 1781, American and French forces surrounded British troops at Yorktown, Virginia. The British commander, General Cornwallis, found himself trapped. French naval forces blocked escape by sea. After weeks of siege, Cornwallis surrendered. The surrender effectively ended major fighting. The colonies had achieved their goal. Recognition of independence. In 1783, Britain and the United States signed the Treaty of Paris. Britain officially recognized American independence. The war was over. A new nation had emerged. The United States now faced the challenge of building a government and shaping its future. Conclusion. The journey from British colonies to an independent nation was filled with conflict, sacrifice, and determination. What began as protests against taxation evolved into a revolution that changed the world. The success of the American Revolution inspired democratic movements across the globe and established the foundation of the United States. From 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast emerged a nation that would one day become one of the most influential countries in history. The American Revolution was more than a war for independence. It was a fight over ideas, rights, and self-government. And its impact continues to shape the world today.